Welcome to the Sherwood Forest Book Club, presented by the Into the Greenwood podcast. My name is Thaddeus, and today's review is the novel In a Dark Wood by Michael Cadnum, copyright 1998. This book got onto my radar via the article Always the Outlaw, The Potential for Subversion of the Metanarrative and Retellings of Robin Hood by Geoffrey Gates from Children's Literature and Education, Volume 37, March 2006. Link in the description below. While the book is slim at under 250 pages and has a quickly paced plot, it itself is not an example of children's literature. Rather, Gates uses it as a comparison point to examine the idea of inverting commonly accepted narratives in Robin Hood retelling in both storybook and novel form. What the book is a character study. Not of Robin Hood, though, but of the Sheriff of Nottingham. In a Dark Wood presents Geoffrey, the Sheriff of Nottingham, and he is not a good man. He's not a sociopathic, greedy malcontent, a la Alan Rickman in many of the successive portrayals. But he is vain and prone to using cruelty and abusing his authority in pursuit of his own desires. His view of the world is small, and the things that don't fit neatly into it, such as the jester who mocks him in his castle, the suspected infidelity of his wife, or his own acts of infidelity for that matter, or some highwaymen hiding in the forest, well, those represent problems that aren't to be tolerated and require being excised from that world that he views. In the book, Robin Hood himself is less of a character and more of an ideal. He's emblematic of both a literal and metaphorical larger world than the one that the sheriff strives to maintain. By the end of the book, the sheriff has been exposed to this larger world via his interactions with Robin Hood and has become a happier and more accepting person than he had been before. This is something that I really like. While in the story, Robin Hood displays excellent skill with a bow and sword, he doesn't win the day through a force of arms, but by being a merciful, empathetic, and frankly kind of fun individual. In other words, a good influence. More than most books, I had to really sit on the work and ponder it for a while, as the writing style can be a bit obtuse at times, and the ending felt rather abrupt. But ultimately, I found it satisfying. Robin Hood's mere existence making the sheriff a better human being has more substance and weight to it than Robin Hood snuffing out the sheriff's life after some climactic duel. It's certainly not the most approachable book I've ever read, though. Cadnum indulges in artistic flourishes that I often found to be more distracting than insightful. For instance, this line, after the sheriff commands his squire to fetch someone. Hugh's feet made almost no sound on the floor. Only the smallest hint of someone passing, the sort of sound a thought makes when the mind turns away from it. Suddenly, I'm taken out of the narrative as I reread that line and try to make it make sense to me. Or earlier, when Geoffrey is thinking on his reflection in the looking glass, and the author distracts from this example of the sheriff's vanity to muse on how a ripple in a corner of the glass looks like the wing of an angel. The language strives to evoke the feelings that the protagonist is experiencing, and the use of these poetic devices are a tool towards that. And while it's debatable how well Cadnum succeeds in using these tools at times, he also doesn't belabor the metaphors, and the work isn't ponderous. The narrative moves along at a pretty brisk rate. I'd also like to mention that I'm quite fond of that character of Hugh, a young squire who idolizes the sheriff. He makes for an interesting addition to the stable of Robin Hood-related characters, in that he is a good, loyal, and guileless individual, but one who works for the sheriff and against Robin Hood. Even from the beginning, he serves to help humanize the vain and cruel sheriff through the lens of his youthful idolizing of a paternal figure. One is left to imagine that Hugh's future with the sheriff as a role model would have been rather bleak, were it not for the reformation we see in the sheriff's character as a result of Robin Hood's presence in their lives. And so we are left with a subtly conveyed moral, regarding the rippling impacts that a life well lived can impart. Furthermore, this book successfully achieves the rare feat of being a Robin Hood story that is classically true to the roots of Robin Hood, to the point of including a rather unadulterated retelling of Robin Hood and the Potter, one of the oldest extant Robin Hood tales from the Middle Ages, while also being completely different in approach and in scope from any other Robin Hood retelling I've ever encountered. This book won't be for everyone, but as both a relatively unique work and a quick read, I do think it is well worth giving a chance. If you have suggestions for a future Sherwood Forest Book Club review, or are interested in submitting one yourself, please drop us a line at intogreenwood@gmail.com. Happy reading.